My name is Manoli from YourAMZ. We've helped over 50 multi-million dollar brands scale on Amazon. And in this video, I sit down with our founder and CEO, Petros, to talk about how you can think about creating a pricing strategy for your products on Amazon. We think about your account level goal, your fixed cost, your contribution margin target per product, and your marketing spend per product, and a lot more. And we think about and talk about how all of these factors fit together to create a pricing strategy. If you have any questions or thoughts throughout the video, just leave a comment below. And if you get value, please give the video a like. Hope you enjoy.
Cool. So I made like a fun little visualization tool here. This is not the tool that we use internally. We have a much more comprehensive tool. But I built this just to sort of walk through the thought process of cost structures and figuring out how much marketing spend based on your business level goals, product life cycle, contribution margin requirements. So I'm going to walk through like a bunch of examples and just kind of like talk about the thought process here. This is something that you should really go through before you start spending and pricing your products on Amazon. But we know from experience that a lot of brands have never gone through this sort of exercise, even though they've been selling on Amazon for quite some time. What we sometimes will find out going through this exercise with the new brands is that they know they're not making as much money as they expected, but they never understood why exactly that was happening. So this just makes it really clear, with every unit you sell, where those dollars are going. And if they're not ending up to your bottom line, we have to figure out whether that's by design, we want it that way, or if we have to make adjustments to change that. So this is going to make sense as I walk through it, but the things that are already filled out here at the top are business level goal and the product life cycle of this example product. So keep in mind, this is a product I'm making up. It has a price point of $100, and it's in this growth phase of the product life cycle, which is referenced here. The business level goal is balanced, so it's right in the middle here between growth and profit-focused strategies. This is a very common place for most companies to be, so it's a good example to use here. So you'll see here a blank number. This is the next thing we want to think about. CM stands for contribution margin, and this depends heavily on these two things here. So you'll see a range here. This is our normal range for these decisions here. So for a balanced business level goal and a product that's in that growth phase, this is the typical range of contribution margin targets that we're going to pick from for these to make sense. So in this case, I'm going to choose 5% as our contribution margin target. Your company might be different. The same company owned by two different groups of people might have actual different contribution margin targets. So this is highly dependent on what you're looking for from your Amazon business. For this example, we're going to say 5% because that is a pretty common product level contribution margin target for a product in this growth phase and a business level goal of balance. The next thing we want to fill in here are our shipping weights. So for this product, the shipping weight is 1.45 pounds. This is just an example. Has a length of 8 inches, a width of 6 inches, and a height of 4 inches. And this comes out to a cubic foot size of 0.11. Why is this important? This is going to give us our size tier and our cost of kind of affects several costs here, but mostly it's going to affect our FBA fee and our storage costs. So I know just from experience that this product is going to be in the large standard tier. This is something you can look up. I actually have an example here of their chart for this. So I know that it's in large standard because it's not small enough to be small standard and it's not big enough to be oversized. So we're just going to look here in this large standard. 1.45 is going to land here, and we're looking at 4.6 for $10 product, but we're actually in this greater than $50 product range, so we're going to pay 5.52 for this product. So let's go back to our sheet and put, what did I say, 5.52 here. And for our storage costs, this is from experience or from your data. I know a product like this is typically going to last in the warehouse for 2 months. And if it is this size and under standard conditions, it's going to be something around 17 cents. But your product or your days on hand goals might be different. But it's usually a pretty small percentage. So typically, if you have something 10 to 20 cents here, like that's usually going to cover it in the standard fees. Inbound shipping, I'm just going to put 0.25 here, 25 cents. It's probably close to right. For prep costs, this is going to depend on how much prep there is for your product, but I'm just going to put $1 here as an example. You might have 0. You might have something less than this, more than this, but this is stuff like bubble wrapping, labeling, multi-packing, that kind of thing. And then your cost of goods sold, this is the cost of your product to manufacture and sell your product. So things like, what the factory charges you to manufacture the product, the cost to import it, the costs that go into this product before you ship it into FBA. And really anything you want to put under cost of goods sold, every company is a little different in how they define this. But for this example, we'll say that it costs $25 all in for cost of goods sold. So what are we looking at here? These are your non-marketing costs. Let's go over them again. Cost of goods sold, prep cost, inbound shipping, FBA fees, storage costs. I have the refund rate here. So depends on your category or your data, what your refund rate has been or might be. But for this product, let's say that it's 5%. We want to remove these costs before we think about our marketing spend. And then you have your referral fee. This is your Amazon referral fee, and it is almost always going to be 15% of your selling price. So we'll just say that it's going to be 15% of the selling price here. So all in all, like your all-in non-marketing costs for this product are $51.94. And no matter what your goals are, or what your target is, or what your spend is, or your discounting, this is going to stay the same across strategies. So it's really important to understand what your non-marketing costs are so that, this is going to be the same no matter what goals you pick here. So moving down, we want to pick our contribution margin target, which we've already picked at 5%. That's going to come in here, excuse me. And that translates to a $5, contribution margin per unit sold. And then our marketing costs, the last piece of the puzzle here is what do we expect our average discount to be? In our case, we're looking at a balanced strategy with a growth product. We're probably looking here at least 5% average discount when we sell this product. Your product might be different. You might want to be more aggressive. I'm going to say 5% here. So typically, if you average out our selling price for the entire year for this product, we're actually selling it for 5% off or $95. So what's left over here is what I'm calling our allowable marketing spend. So pretty much whatever hasn't been accounted for in our costs, our discounting, our contribution margin requirement, that's going to be the money left over for our marketing spend. So to illustrate this a little more clearly, we have our donut chart here, and this breaks down all the main categories here out of $100, which is our price. But you could think about this also as percent because it's out of 100, which is why I picked this price. So in this case, your non-marketing costs are 51 or 52% of your total costs. Your contribution margin here of $5 is going to be 5% of your total selling price. Your average discount is another 5% or $5. And then what's left over here, that's going to be our marketing spend or our allowable marketing spend. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of how we think about it, because really what we want to get to for this product is, how much can we actually spend to grow this product without, violating our contribution margin requirements. It's a very simplified way of looking at it, but when you're at the beginning, when we're onboarding a new customer or a brand is doing this exercise for the first time, this is probably where you want to start, with a little bit of a simplified view of what you're trying to achieve, how much marketing spend you can allow for this product. So you could track that as one of your metrics, and then, track your performance in your sales and see how much you can grow this product given this $38 or 38% marketing spend. So how does this look like, let's say, if you're looking at a different goal? So let's say we had a growth strategy, not a balanced strategy, but at our business level, we're ready and to invest a lot of money into growth. So this same product, same cost structure, same, dimensions and all that, now with a different contribution margin target, which matches our growth focused business goal. So in this case, we're looking at a range of like -50 to -10. It's really, this is a special range when you're in the -50. This is like the most extreme growth focused mindset you could have. In our case, this imaginary growth focused company is going to have a contribution target of -15%. So their goal, because they're so growth focused, they're willing to lose money. They're actually willing to lose 15% or $15 per $100 that they spend. So how does that change our marketing spend and our discount? So because we're looking at a more aggressive, more growth focused business goal, we're actually willing to discount even more than 5%. So I've increased here the average discount from 5 to 10%. And then what's left over here is our allowable spend, which has now increased to 54%. So if you look at the difference between these two charts, the only thing that really changed here are these two numbers. Our contribution margin went from $5 to negative $15 per unit, and our discount went from $5 to $10. And then that actually changed our allowable marketing spend to change to $53 per unit sold instead of 38. So this is extremely aggressive. You're really trying to grab market share, grow your brand, willing to lose money in the short term. Still a pretty common strategy, but you do see this balanced strategy more often because most companies have limited resources. They have to make some amount of profit, even if they're, advertising a product that's in this growth phase. So let's look at the same product again, but from a profit focus phase. So we changed our contribution margin now to 15% plus 15%, from our negative 15% in our growth focus. The big change here, oh, sorry, the other thing we did here is, we put that average discount back to 5% because we're not quite as aggressive as the previous example. So you could see there's a pretty dramatic change here in what we can spend per unit sold. $54 per unit down to $29 a unit. So this is the same product, same, maybe even the same type of company, but just different business level goals. Profit focused, growth focused, balanced. So the main thing here that you're picking is this 15% or negative 15% or 5% contribution margin. So when you're thinking about your business level goal, it really is going to affect what your contribution margin is, as well as the product life cycle. So talking about product life cycle now, let's talk about, the difference between, let's say, a product in this growth phase and a product that's more in this mature phase. The difference between these two products now is not necessarily the business level goal, which remains balanced, but we're changing the product life cycle. So it's similar product, similar cost structure, but a product that has already sort of reached its peak sales. It's no longer really, there's no huge opportunity for grabbing market share. You're really maintaining your market share at this stage. So you could see the difference. Really, the only difference between these two is the contribution margin target. So you're going from a range of negative 10 to 10, and now you're in a range of 20 to 30%, just based on this product life cycle change. You are almost never going to lose money or break even on a mature product. You have to make profit when you have a mature product. Like that is where your profitability comes from. And there's no reason to invest at a negative rate or at a too low contribution margin rate when the product doesn't have a lot of potential for growth. So you're really only going to have negative contribution margin targets when your product is in these early phases, growth, and the early stages of launch and introduction. So for this example, really the other thing we changed here is the average discount. As products mature, you're going to have fewer discounts. So for this example, we've dropped this to actually 3%, which is really low. But that's how you want to think about it. When your products mature, you want to spend less on marketing. You want to discount less because people already know about your product. You've already reached your peak penetration or market share. So you're not really trying to incentivize too much here. You're really trying to grab profit, even if you are in a balanced phase here. So you could see the difference here between the two. For the growth life cycle phase, we were spending $38 per unit sold. And for this example, where we're in the mature phase, we're only spending a little bit over $20 per unit sold. But you could see here the change in contribution margin, skyrockets, where you're going from $5 per unit sold, but for your mature product, now you're trying to capture like $25. When you're going into profit focus, you're actually trying to capture even more. So you can see here, if we're really focused on profit, you're spending something like 10% and maybe less. I've seen people try to capture 40%, where they're only spending like 6% on ad spend at this stage. And then my last example here is a growth focused with a mature product, which is, can seem counterintuitive or conflicting. But every company is going to have a portfolio of products at different product life cycles. And, if your business level goal is growth focused, you likely have a lot of products that are in this growth phase, but you'll likely also have products in your portfolio that are in the mature phase. And you still want to capture some level of contribution or profitability from these mature SKUs in your portfolio. So in this case, your lowest that we recommend for a mature product is 10%. For this example, I picked 15. And in this case, like you're still spending quite a lot of money to maintain this mature, this peak market share. 28% is really aggressive for a mature product. But you know what? That's your goal. Your goal is growth focused. Your goal is to maintain that market share while growing all your other products. So this makes sense for some companies, not all, not most, not all. Most are going to be in this balanced or this profit focused. Make sense?
Yep.
Cool. I mean, that's kind of it for now. These are just examples of how to think about cost structures and how to think about, how your business level goal and the product life cycle fit into your strategy and how you can use those to guide your marketing spend decisions. There is one example here that I want to make sure that I touch on, which is something that we run into with new clients all the time, which is they don't have enough margin to actually sell their product on Amazon the way that they want to. So let's say you have a growth product, you have a balanced strategy, your contribution margin target is something like 5%, but your price instead of being 100 is, let's say, 70. Now, if you look at this chart here, you could see that, and I can do it before and after, look at the marketing spend. The marketing spend dropped from $38 per unit sold to 38%, down to about $17 per unit sold, which is closer to like 25%. We've seen even more, insane examples like of a $50 product, where their non-marketing costs were taking up something like 80% of their total margin. There is no way that we can grow this product or market this product effectively, given this cost structure. So sometimes one of the first things we do is when we go through this analysis, we actually help our clients, we help our clients pick a price that is still competitive. We can still position the product competitively at that price, but also allows enough margin for discounting, for marketing spend, to actually like meet the goals that they're trying to achieve. That's often most obvious when they're like talking about being profit focused. And let's say, they want a contribution margin of 40%, but their products only has a price point of $80. So now, their non-marketing costs are taking up 60, 70% of their total revenue. There is literally no room for marketing spend in this example. So this is a really good thing to go through. One, to make sure you're choosing marketing spends that match your goals and your product life cycles, but you're also finding out, do I even have adequate margin to hit this contribution margin target and, have enough room for marketing spend to hit that goal? So we walk our clients through this. It's important to like really do this for your brand if you're doing this on your own. But we're going to get into some more details on cost structures in the future. But I think this is a really good place to start, and we'll leave it here.
Awesome. Yeah. So, first thing is look at your price, look at your, non-marketing costs, figure out what is your profit margin. Then think about what is your business level goal, what is your product life cycle stage. Let that determine your contribution margin target. And then from there, you're going to look at, what is your average discount, and then what ad spend is left over to market that product.
Yeah, exactly. And then one last note here, you might find out that your business level goal is wrong. You may think that you're profit focused, but all your products are in the growth stage. You shouldn't be picking profit focused as your goal. So sometimes this exercise will actually help you see this business level goal much more clearly. You might find out that you need a balanced strategy, given the portfolio of products that you sell. So it's a really good exercise to walk through this with every single product that you have, just to make sure that your cost structure makes sense, but also that your business level goal makes sense.